Welcome to the Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast, brought to you by the Arkansas Cattlemen's Association. Here, we dive into the heart of Arkansas's cattle industry, where legislation, education, advocacy, and development come together to support the hardworking cattle producers of the natural state. Whether you're in the pasture or on the road, this is your connection to the people, policies, and programs shaping the future of our industry.
Hey y'all, and welcome to the Arkansas Business Podcast. We are your hosts, me and Michelle. So I think we're just going to start off this podcast by introducing ourselves. So, hey y'all, my name's Norley Townsend. I'm your Membership and Communications Director here at the Arkansas Cattlemen's Association. This is my first big girl job. So, I just graduated from the University of Arkansas in May with an Ag Communications and Ag Leadership degree. So that's been fun. I grew up in Rosebud, Arkansas on a cow-calf operation, where I still live today. We raise Angus and Brangus cattle.
You also served as our intern.
Oh, yes.
2022.
Yes. I should mention that. Yeah. So, when I was still in college, I think my sophomore year, I came to the Arkansas Cattlemen's Association as an intern. Fell in love with it, and luckily there was a job opening when I was looking for a job straight out of college. So
I hope it felt a little bit like coming home.
It did. It did.
Yeah, and I feel that way too. So if you don't know, my name is Michelle Buffkin Horton. I serve as the Executive Vice President for the Arkansas Cattlemen's Association, but I spent almost 5 years here as your Membership and Communications Director, and so started here in 2018 as the Membership Director, added in some extra job duties and titles, and took on communications as well. Met and married in Arkansas while I was here, so I grew up in Alabama, but I jokingly say, I got to Arkansas as fast as I could, but came up here to work for the Cattlemen's, and met and married Arkansas, married into a cow-calf operation up in northwest Arkansas. So after my almost 5 years as Membership and Communications Director, went to live in northwest Arkansas to be closer to Ryan's family. This opportunity to be the Executive Vice President came open in 2024, and so I came back in January of 2024 to serve as the Executive Vice President. It really does, it feels like coming home. And so I'm really excited about it. And so I also have 2 degrees in agricultural communications. You'll hopefully see that we get to use those degrees within this podcast. But we're really excited to host the Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast and to kick off just this new way to connect with our members. So I guess that's a great segue of why are we hosting a podcast? What do we want to do with it?
Yeah, for sure. So we basically just started this to better connect with our members. So we're planning on posting this weekly, and obviously we're going to give legislative updates here within the next couple of months, and then we have area conferences. But we hope to, interview our members and tell y'all's story here on our podcast. So.
Yeah, and so this kind of came to fruition from a executive planning session that we had back in September. So if you don't know the Cattlemen's, or if maybe you're not as familiar with the Cattlemen's, we are a grassroots organization focused on cattle producers in the state of Arkansas. The name kind of gives it away there. But we focus on legislation, education, advocacy, and development. So as a grassroots organization, while yes, you have staff here in Little Rock that serve you, we work on behalf of our members. And so our executive committee met back in September and pitched the idea of a podcast. Wanted to say we had one of our members that was very much, he's like, this is the only place I get my news, is on podcasts. He's like, I'm driving so much, I'm in the tractor so much. He's like, have we ever thought about doing one? And Norley kind of looked at each other, and we kind of looked at each other and laughed and smiled, and we're like, oh, I think we could do this.
Actually have a little bit.
And so, it was born. And here we are, a few months past September, but kicking it off. And like Norley said, we're really excited to, yes, share some information from the Cattlemen's, but really also connect with our members and share our members' story. And so this just gives us one more way to do that. So we've got our magazine, we've got social media, and now we'll have this podcast as well.
For sure. So I think that'll lead us off into Hats on the Hill. So what is our little series we're calling Hats on the Hill?
Yeah, so Hats on the Hill is our focus on the legislative session. So as I discussed, we focus on legislation, education, advocacy, and development. And so to me, those are some of the intangible benefits you get from a membership with the Cattlemen's Association. And legislation is one of my personal favorites. And so that is how we created quite a few years ago, this Hats on the Hill series. It started off as just a video on Facebook with our exec Cody at the time, just sharing our legislative update and saying, hey, here's what's happening. Here's the timeliest information we can get to people of a breakdown of what's happening at Capitol Hill, both in Little Rock and in DC. So we're going to transition those a little bit differently and start using them or putting them here in this podcast. And so making sure that we can still get those timely updates to people about any laws and legislation that's coming up.
Yeah, so for our first Hats on the Hill, can you give us an overview of what's going on?
Yeah, so we just kicked off legislative session this week. So Monday, January 13th, here at the state level, they gavelled in for session. That started with just swearing in of legislators and saying whether you're re-elected or newly elected, they all got sworn in. Their families were able to join them and be there with them for that momentous occasion. A little bit of a breakdown. I have my notes here if you're watching online or if you hear rustling, so that way I don't forget one of these numbers or one of the very important people we're excited to work with. So just a little bit of a legislative breakdown in the House and the Senate at the state level. There's only one new member in the Senate, and so that's a Senator Jamie Scott from North Little Rock, and so excited to be working with the one new member there in the Senate. That Senate is led by Senator Bart Hester as the Senate President Pro Tem, so really looking forward to working with those senators and with Senator Hester as well in leadership there. And then on the House, there are 11 new members, and they do their leadership a little bit differently. On that Monday, on January 13th, they actually set and elected in the House their leadership. So they elected Representative Brian Evans as Speaker of the House. They also went through and elected all of their committee leadership as well on the House side on Monday. So you have Representative Roger Lynch serving as the House Ag Chair, and Representative Jeremiah Moore serving as the Vice Chair of the House Ag Committee. So while we're going to keep an eye on all of the committees, we really obviously tie in heavily to the Agriculture Committee. On the Senate side, because I did forget to mention those, we have Senator Ronald Caldwell as the chair of the Senate Ag Committee and Senator Matt Stone as the vice chair. And so the rest of this week after swearing in, Tuesday they had State of the State address, so Governor Sanders got up and spoke and shared a little bit of where the state of Arkansas is at and what her goals and future for the future are this year. And then we started our organizational meetings. So those committees that we're going to keep up with, they all meet. It kind of feels a little bit like maybe the first day of school. And so they all get up and look at the syllabus, it seems, and then make the rules of how they're going to function, how they're going to work together at the Capitol this year, and gives us gives the public an opportunity to meet the people that are going to serve on those committees and get to know them and get to see kind of what they have on their goal and on their agenda for the coming year. So we'll include it in the show notes. We'll include the full list of who serves on the ag committees. I'm not going to sit here and name them all by any means, but we'll include the link there in the show notes so you can see if your senators or representatives on those committees.
Yeah, so speaking of, how can members engage with their legislators, or how can they get in contact with them?
Yeah, so in those show notes, I'll tell you kind of which senator or which representative serves on which committee, so we'll make sure we have that in there. And I encourage you to reach out to your legislators, reach out to your senators and your representatives. Now is the perfect time to start those conversations when we really don't have a big ask. We really don't have something that we're working on. We have lots of things we're working on, but nothing that we have quite got to the asking form yet. And so just reach out and say, hey, thanks for your leadership. I'm here to serve as a resource for you. I'm here if you have any questions about agriculture. Really grateful for your leadership and for your representation that you're providing for ag. And so that link we'll put in our show notes. We'll have all of the email addresses available for the legislatures.
Yeah, for sure. So with that, I'm going to lead into what are the ACA legislative priorities for 2025?
Yeah, so we have legislative priorities on two different fronts. So we'll start with the state side, and then I'll give a little bit of a federal update on our legislative priorities there. And so really, we are working on taxes. You're going to hear a lot about taxes this year, both at the federal and the state level on this podcast. And so we're working on tax exemptions. So working on a card to provide for members or for farmers. It doesn't necessarily have to be an ACA member to prove that tax exempt status. And so we're also working on protecting those tax exemptions that we do have while working to hopefully expand some new tax exemptions on the state side. And so we're also working on addressing the need for large animal veterinarians. We know that there's a large animal veterinarian deserts, and I say there are multiple large animal veterinarian deserts in the state of Arkansas, and trying to work to address those deserts and address those issues that it proves to producers of how we can find veterinarians. They're driving 3-4 hours sometimes in some cases to get a vet, or they're waiting and avoiding and not having a vet in their area. So trying to address some of those along with, we'll keep an eye on anything that comes up. While we have a lot of things we are currently watching and monitoring, we're also just going to obviously keep an eye on anything that maybe we haven't exactly thought of, and make sure that any legislation coming up, looking to see how it's going to affect cattle producers. On the federal side, they kicked off the 119th Congress on January the 3rd. So a couple of things we're looking at the federal level. We are looking at a farm bill. So working with the now chair of the Senate Ag Committee, Senator Bozeman. Very grateful to have his leadership in the state of Arkansas and to have him just represent us so incredibly well on the Senate Ag Committee. And so working to hopefully reach a farm bill for 2025. And so keeping in mind, and there are a lot of the disaster payments and programs that are available for cattle producers. Also going to be working with the chair of the House Natural Resources Committee, Congressman Westerman, addressing addressing black-headed buzzards. And so I was jokingly tell Nora Lee, like, every time I go to a county meeting, I've never in my almost 6 years here at the Cattlemen's been to a county meeting where somebody doesn't talk about veterinarians and black-headed buzzards. And so working with Congressman Westerman on addressing those black-headed buzzards and the issues and the depredation that we face within the cattle industry on that front. And then again, taxes. Gonna be a topic you're gonna hear a lot. So at the federal level, really looking at the death tax or the inheritance tax. And so the Trump era tax cuts helped out on that death tax a lot, and so trying to see if we can get either an extension on those Trump era tax cuts or get a permanent solution for those tax cuts to prevent the inheritance tax, or the death tax as we so unlovingly call it at the Cattlemen's, from rearing its head and becoming even worse down the road. And so Arkansas is actually pretty well poised for a good year in DC. So we have a unique position where all of our federal delegation holds gavel power. So whether that is the chair of a committee or chair of a subcommittee. So really excited to work with our federal delegation along with our state legislatures here on just to see what we can do to continue protecting cattle producers in the state of Arkansas and continue fighting for them.
For sure. So I don't know if we mentioned it or not, but Michelle is a registered lobbyist. And she fights for Arkansas cattle producers every day. But she does not have an opinion. The AACA has policies. So how do those policies come to exist?
Yeah, so I always like to tell people, I don't get an opinion. Just like Nora Lee said, I have plenty of opinions. I just don't get to act on them on the behalf of the cattlemen's. And so the way these policies happen is, again, as a grassroots organization, they are member driven. And so each county, we have 64 county associations representing all 75 counties. And so each county has the ability to bring forth what we call a resolution. And so prime example would be this large animal veterinarian focus that we have this year. And so Faulkner County actually brought forth a resolution last year to say, hey, there is a shortage of large animal veterinarians. What can we do to fix this? And so they brought forth a resolution expressly saying that this is a problem. Here's the issue the cattle producers in the state of Arkansas are facing. Here are some ways we think we could fix it. And so they brought forth that resolution. They voted on it at the county level. It came to our legislative and policy committee. They helped wordsmith that, tweak it a little bit to make it match the rest of our policy book, and then came forth before the boards, and then ultimately it goes to the entire membership. So at convention, the entirety of our membership is invited to our membership meeting, and that is where that final decision is made and where that final vote is had on what our policies and our procedures and our priorities are going to be for the coming year. And so, I mean, it really does start at a grassroots effort and a grassroots level. Every single piece of policy we have in our policy book is from a county.
Yeah, so following those policies, what bills are we tracking for this year?
Yeah, so we've already talked a good bit about veterinary medicine. You're going to keep hearing about it for at least a couple of weeks. So we are working with a couple of different people throughout the session. And so one, I do want to note that they pre-filed over 100 bills so far, or prior to session this year. If you don't know, that's double what they pre-filed in session last year, or in session last time in 2023. And so off to a very busy start. So there are a couple of bills that got pre-filed that are tied to agriculture, but we don't have any policy on. So we've got a bill that's pertaining to raw milk, and we've got a bill pertaining to crop residue burning, both on the House side. And so while we're keeping an eye on them, we're tracking them. We are engaging with them. So we're watching those. But then on the Senate side, we're really digging into this veterinary medicine pretty heavily already. So we've got Senate Bill 61 and Senate Bill 68. Both of them brought forth by Senator Ricky Hill on the Senate side and then Representative Vaught on the House side. And so Senate Bill 61 really addresses telehealth or telemedicine in veterinarians. And so what Senator Hill is trying to do and Representative Vaught is trying to do with this legislation is make it legal to practice veterinary medicine via electronics, whether that be a phone call, an audio visual call, a video, whatever it may be, but allowing them to practice veterinary medicine to some extent electronically. And so that has been introduced into the Senate. It will then go to the Senate Ag Committee. It's already been referred. So here next week, we might have an update on where that stands. And so really interesting bill there. And then on Senate Bill 68, it's working with the veterinary technicians. And so it's really just kind of further clarifying some legislation we had from the past session that's going to allow veterinary technicians, veterinary technologists, and veterinary technician specialists to do certain items without being under the direct supervision of veterinarians. And so it's going to be, again, both of those are both within the veterinary medicine realm, but really kind of watching both of those pretty heavily because we do hope they'll be able to help out some cattle producers. And as other bills come up, we'll definitely keep you updated. But those are the two big ones we're looking at right now.
So how do you hope that bill will help cattle producers? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so on the telehealth side, our goal, like I said, all it's doing is making it legal to operate is a poor choice of words, maybe, making it legal to practice veterinary medicine via teleconference. And so if you think back to COVID and the number of times that humans, called their doctors or did a video conference, I know that was, I think, the first time I ever did a telehealth conference for me. And so it's really just making veterinarians a little bit more accessible to cattle producers and making it hopefully where they can see a few more calls throughout the day, throughout the time, because they don't necessarily have to go to your operation. And so while I mentioned that all this is doing is allowing this to be possible, if it goes through both chambers and if it's approved and then Governor Sanders signs it, it will then go to the Department of Agriculture to promulgate the rules around what can be done via telehealth. And so for me, one of the prime examples I can think of is if you have a cow with pink eye, you can look at it, pretty easily if it's got pink eye and you know exactly what to do. You may not have antibiotics on site, though. You need to get a veterinarian, you need to get a prescription available. You should with this bill, hopefully be able to video conference your vet, send a picture to your vet, whatever it may be, telehealth visit with your veterinarian, get a prescription called in where you can go pick up and treat that animal without having a veterinarian come on your farm. And so simple things like that, all the way up to a lot larger items, we'll kind of keep an eye on if this bill does move forward, how those rules get promulgated and what it can help. But to me, I'm hoping it really, the long short of it is I hope it makes veterinarians more accessible to cattle producers, makes veterinarians a little bit more available for a lot of the easier things, a lot of the smaller things.
For sure.
Yeah. So we talked a lot, I talked a lot about legislation, but that's really not the only benefit of the cattlemen's. It's really not the only part of being a member. We really didn't talk about the membership side of the cattlemen's, and so I want to make sure we take the time to do that this podcast. And so we're going to kind of switch gears here, and I'm going to let Nora Lee sit on the hot seat and answer some questions. So what is the Cattlemen's membership drive? Like, when does that start? What does it look like?
Yeah, so we just started our 2025 membership drive. It starts in January and ends June 30th. So that's really when our membership drive ends June 30th and technically starts July 1st. But we don't really start our drive until January the 1st. So renewal slips should have hit your mailboxes last week. And you can either pay by returning that slip with a check or cash, or if you want to pay online by PayPal, or if you want to call us with a credit card. We're happy to help you either way.
Perfect. So that kind of covers that. So what, with this membership drive, what does it entail? Do we have, so you say we go January, technically July through June, but we really start in January. So what is this drive? What are we driving to try to get?
Yeah, so we're trying to push for our membership to increase, if that's the right word. But we do different incentives. So people recruiting different members, we have different prizes. So for January, our membership incentive is sponsored by Big Branch Cooper Cattle, and they're sponsoring a nitrogen semen tank, an AI kit, and a free registration to one of their AI classes in 2025. And those will go to the top 3 recruiters in the state for the month of January through to when we really started in July, all the way till now. So whoever has recruited, you can get your name in the hat by putting your name on the recruited by line, on their slip, on the online, or however you pay. So
perfect. Are those is this monthly drive the only prizes, the only recruitment programs that we have in the membership drive?
No. So we've actually added one this year, but I'll talk about that in a second. So one really popular one we have is called our Top Hand Awards. So how you get that is if you recruit 15 new members or 30 renewals, by putting your name on that recruited by list, you get a ACA Top Hand buckle, or if you want a jacket, or a partial registration to convention. You get your pick of those 3. So we're really excited about that. Preferred Livestock Products is sponsoring that this year again. We're extremely thankful for them. Without them, we couldn't really have a Top Hand program. In our new program this year, we're calling Recruiter Rewards. So if you can't make the Top Hand Award, I know it's a lot getting 15 new members and 30 renewals. So if you just recruit one member, that could be new or renewals, you get an ACA decal. If you recruit 5 members, you get ACA logo leather gloves. And we're excited about that. We haven't done that before. And if you recruit 10 members, you get a metal license plate. And we're really excited about that. So not just the regular ones you get at convention or here at the area conferences or here at the office. So
yeah, I like that, and I like both of those programs because to me they kind of give us tangible prize, a tangible thank you to our recruiters. Like Nora Lee mentioned, we really couldn't do our membership drive and our membership programs without our sponsors, but really truly we could not do the Cattlemen's Association and do the work of the Cattlemen's without our members and without our recruiters. And so we're really grateful to our sponsors to allow us that way to tangibly thank our recruiters. So we talked a lot about recruiting. We've talked a lot about how to what prizes you can get, but let's talk a little bit about maybe why somebody should be a member of the Cattlemen's Association. Let's talk about one of the member benefits. So I know one of the ones that we have is an accidental death and dismemberment policy. So what is that one, and what are the parameters and the rules around that?
Yeah, so that's one of our most popular membership benefits. So that's a $3,000 accidental death and dismemberment policy. You have to be younger than 68 years old, but if you are older than 68, you can either gift that policy to a family member, and you get a discount card with that as well. But you must contact Lisa Driggers with Globe Life. That's who our policy is from. And you have to activate that. So just call her. If you need her number, call us here at the office, and we're happy to give you her number so she can get you set up with everything.
Yeah, while we hope no one ever needs that policy, it's really a lot of members are grateful to have that to fall back on.
Yes,
for sure. And we're also really grateful to work with Globe Life and with Lisa, because Lisa herself is a cattle producer and understands a lot of the work and understands our members. And so we're really grateful to be able to work with her. For anyone listening, maybe that isn't a member yet, what's the best way for them to join? Or maybe if they haven't renewed their membership yet, what are the best ways for people to do that?
Yeah, like I said before, if your renewal notices that came in the mail. If you're new, you can just simply go online to arbeef.org/join, I believe, and you can sign up there and sign up for our weekly newsletter that goes out every Friday at noon, or just call the office. And if you have any questions, we're happy to help you in any way.
Yep, and we'll put those links in the show notes as well, so that way people can get those links. Like I mentioned at the beginning, we have county associations all across the state, and so if you are interested in one of those county meetings or attending a county meeting, give us a call at the office. We can put you in touch with your local chapter, your local Cattlemen's Association, and they can also help you out and take those memberships as well. And so we're here to help any way that we can at the Cattlemen's Association at the office. So we've talked a lot. We've talked a lot about membership. We've talked a lot about legislation. And as we mentioned kind of in the beginning of this is going to be the focus of the podcast here for a little bit. We're going to be doing Hats on the Hill throughout legislative session. So that's probably going to take up a good chunk of these podcasts to focus on that legislative priority. And so, but if you have feedback, this is our first episode. So if you have feedback, if you have items you want to hear about or things you want us to dive deeper into, this is a great forum for us to do that. A great way for us to kind of dive pretty deep into what's going on at the Cattlemen's or one of the issues you may want to hear about. So let us know. Give us a call, leave some reviews, whatever it might be. Kind of let us know what we want to talk about or what you want to hear about, because that's what we're here for, is to give you something to listen to, and that only works if you want to listen to it. So as Norlie mentioned, we'd love for you to follow along on, join us on our newsletter, follow and subscribe this podcast. We appreciate you tuning in today. But follow, subscribe. We're brand new. We're a little baby fledgling podcast. Leave us a review and make sure that what that does is it helps us become established. It helps other people find our podcast. We're going to be sharing this on social media as well, so I encourage you to share it with your friends or share it with people in your area that maybe aren't cattle producers. But we're really grateful for you tuning in, but more so, we're grateful for the membership. We're grateful for the support of the Arkansas Cattlemen's Association. If we can ever be here, if we can ever do anything here at the office to help you, please let us know. And I'll let you give any final thoughts or remarks or requests.
For sure. Just follow us on social media if you don't. You can come find us at Arkansas Cattlemen's Association on Facebook or ARC_Cattlemen and on Instagram. So.
All right. Thanks you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thank y'all. This is the Arkansas Cattle Business Podcast, your trusted source for all things cattle in the natural state.